Hi there, Cam here from Training Talk. Welcome to this week's episode of Endurance Coaching Business. In this episode, I had a great chat with Taylor from Thomas Endurance Coaching. Not only is Taylor a successful endurance coach, but he also runs a business accelerator for other endurance coaches, and it's called the Growth Circle, so I'll put the links in the show notes. We had a great chat about the struggles that endurance coaches come across when they're trying to grow their businesses, particularly with sales and marketing. So I hope you enjoy it. Hi everyone. I've got Taylor Thomas with me here today from TEC, Taylor Endurance Coaching. That's right, isn't it, Taylor? Taylor Endurance Coaching.
Yeah, Thomas Endurance.
Thomas.
But it's a classic thing because it's my first name and my last name are like the same. I've gotten that my whole life, right? People are like, which one is it?
No, I think I got that wrong last time we were talking, so I apologize for that.
That's all right.
So you and I were having a conversation the other day, sort of unrelated but related, and we figured out that we work with the same kinds of people, endurance coaches. So you've got your endurance coaching business, but you also do an accelerator on the business side for endurance coaches as well. So our audience is really basically the same people on the endurance coaching side. So we figured out that we could probably add a lot of value to each other's audiences. I say audiences, but I can't think of a better word. It's not a very good word for it because we have a bit of a closer relationship with our coaches that we deal with than just an audience. But and we talked through a bunch of business challenges that coaches get into. So we'll get into that a bit later, but maybe if I just give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, and we can go from there.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, and I'll give you a quick overview. Like you said, my name's Taylor Thomas. I'm the founder of TEC, and TEC is a athlete-facing coaching group. So we have resources for athletes primarily in the endurance coaching and strength and conditioning space. But we also have, based on a passion of mine, we have an accelerator program that is there to support service providers in the health and wellness industry who are looking to grow and scale profitable businesses. So we provide everything from technological support to business development, entrepreneurship training to administrative assistance. The list goes on. So we have a full suite of features and processes that we take our coaches through and our business owners through to help them get all the skills, all the resources, relationships they need to grow their business. That accelerator program is called the Growth Circle. So that's the accelerator portion of TEC. And like you said, you and I connected, and you and I have worked together in different capacities. We leverage the Training Tilt platform to help coaches more easily access the technological side of the coaching industry, which I think is something that is massively important and will only continue to get more important as time moves on. So it's something that I believe in, that coaches have a strong tech presence so that they can connect effectively with their clients and build scalable solutions to their business. We can get into that a little bit later. But yeah, realized that we had common interests, and really we're driving at a similar goal in terms of giving coaches the resources they need to grow their businesses. And that's really what I'm most passionate about, is helping coaches make a career, and specifically make a very successful career from a revenue perspective from something that they're passionate about, because that is something that a lot of coaches struggle to do. And I'm committed to solving that problem for coaches, or helping coaches have access to what they need to solve that problem for themselves. So stoked to get into it. And I'll kick it back to you.
Yeah. So, I mean, we share that same passion, really. So as you mentioned, Training Talk's an endurance coaching platform, but we are unique in the fact that we only offer services directly to coaching businesses. So we take maybe more of a business approach, like more of a modern type software platform approach, where all our features are based on helping the coaches both, plan and analyze the training for their athletes, but also the ability to take payments, create and share content online, and even like a simple, easy to use content managed website. So you can pretty much run almost your entire coaching business off one platform, where some of the other platforms are great at like training plans and coaching and data analysis and stuff, but they also sell directly to athletes. So they've got a real, they have to really balance. It's not intentional on their end, but, incentive wise, they have to balance the ability to service coaching businesses, but also if they're just selling their training and analysis tools directly to athletes, which is an entirely different use case. So, they have to balance all of those features. So that's where we come in. That's where we want to be. And again, our goal is also to make, to raise up the coaching industry as a whole, so it doesn't have to be a struggle to make it a full-time income. It's going to be difficult, but the tools, have the tools in place and help with the knowledge as well. And that's where you can help for coaches to be able to develop their business into something more than that's just getting by, or, more than a part-time gig, so they can really take their passion into a really sustainable business over time, long time. I guess that's what I'm trying to say, is like a lot of coaches are passionate early, and they might be have a feeling that they don't mind too much if it's not really earning them a good living, if they can get by, because they love doing it. But I think what I've seen of working with coaches for 10 years now is that enthusiasm doesn't last more than a few years. And, It's the same with a lot of businesses, that they'll last a few years. And then if people can't really push on to the next level, they need to go back and, and actually earn a comparative salary, because there's a lot of opportunity cost in running a business that isn't returning you the money that you could be earning if you were doing something else. So maybe I'll push it back over to you now, maybe just to talk about some of the specific problems or challenges that coaches have, and and how you've been able to help coaches through your accelerator, work their way through those.
Yeah, I'll start just at kind of a macro level and talk about, or just mention the 5 biggest pain points that I've seen. And I've been a coach for 20 years now, and I've worked with a lot of coaches. And so this is, from my own experience, as well as from being intimately involved and acquainted with other business owners in the industry. And these 5 things are things that inevitably I see, each coach, each service provider deal with at some level. It is some problem to be solved in some meaningful way, so that they can, like you said, get to that next level. Because I agree with you. I think that one of my real missions and kind of primary drivers is that I believe that the passion that coaches have, that what gets them started to begin with, should be enough for them to make a living off of, right? And I've heard the narrative too many times from too many people that, yeah, I enjoy doing it, but I'll never be able to make a full-time go at it. Or I'll do this and I'm happy to do it on the side, but I'm going to have my day job. And the fact of the matter is that just really doesn't have to be the case. I know for a fact, I see it play out every single day, that coaches can take their passion and turn it into a wildly successful coaching business. But these 5 things are things that we need to overcome. There's a lot of moving parts, but these are the 5 biggest ones. And I'll just kind of put those out there, and then you and I can chat about them. First is, these are in no particular order of importance, but first one is building a scalable business model. So when we start, we're trading time for money. Time is what we have. That's the commodity. That's what every business really is, that we can give our time, because that's what we have most of. Typically, we don't have a lot of, we don't have an excess of capital. We don't have a big team. But we do have our time. And so we can give that. But then at some point, we need to understand how to scale our time, because you have to go to sleep. And when you stop working, you stop making money. And so we need to think about our time in a more scalable, from a more scalable place. That's where technology comes in. There's also lots of other ways to think about our service offerings. So that's one. client acquisition and retention. So how do I get clients and how do I keep them? This is one of the biggest pain points. I think if we're going to number them, this is probably number one for coaches is how do I get clients? And then turnover is a big thing. Every time you lose a client, you get a demotion. Every time you get a client, you get a raise. So we need to start to figure out how to stop that roller coaster. We need to have consistent client retention and consistent client acquisition so that that's a stable income. So you're not always riding that wave. And there's lots of ways to do that. Next is being a good salesperson. So a lot of coaches are super passionate about their practice, but they're not great at sales. And so ultimately I say, like, you can be the greatest coach in the world, but if you can't, connect your unique value proposition to the pain points of your client in a way that connects with them, then it's not going to matter. So you got to be good at sales. Next is switching from a coach to a business owner. So there's business development, entrepreneurial skills. That's a wholly different thing. Being a coach, writing a good training plan is an important skill. That's also a skill that can be learned. I'll put that out there for anybody who's like, oh, I don't know, like I've never coached before. Like that's a learned skill, right? We can teach you to be, there's lots of resources out there, whether it's through TEC or through any of the other places, national governing bodies and so on. You can learn how to write good training plans. The thing that is harder to do is to figure out how to run a business. And if you don't have that background, then the learning curve is pretty steep. And so that's one of the things we focus a lot on in the growth circle is helping people understand what those entrepreneurial skills are and how to actually deploy them in a meaningful way within their business. So you don't spend the first 3 years screwing around and, and trying to figure it out. And then last and certainly not least, and the highest on my list, because it's the thing I'm most passionate about in terms of working with coaches, is support and mentorship, right? So the coaching industry tends to be very siloed. We have one individual over here and another individual right over here, and they're both trying to do the same thing, and they're both trying to recreate the wheel and solve all their problems by themselves and figure out all these things that I just mentioned. And the fact of the matter is that when you're around people that are driven to be successful, that are doing impactful things, and you have that support, you have a community of collaboration, you have mentorship, people that have done it before, your time to success is dramatically increased or decreased rather. You get there faster. And so I think that support and mentorship, the more that we can collaborate as an industry, the better. So those are the 5 biggest ones for me, again, in no particular order. That's kind of what I spend most of my days doing, is trying to help people solve those problems in some meaningful way for their businesses so that they can flatten the learning curve and truthfully, like, not put up with the stuff that I had to put up. I did it by myself. And that took a long time and cost a lot more money than it should have. And the list goes on. So I'm genuinely just want to help people not do that and learn from my mistakes. Yeah, from your experience, I know you and I have connected on marketing and some of these challenges. And again, those are kind of high level things that I give. But from your perspective, what are you seeing? More specifics or more granular versions of that?
Yeah. So what I see a lot of probably sits around the mindset sort of things and the approach that people take to it, because I probably don't get into the weeds as much as you do with the coaches, because we're offering, I try to help through content and stuff, but I don't work one-on-one with individual coaches to help them work through this, but I do see questions come in and I see what they're trying to do. So I'll have calls with people to try and get their technical side set up in terms of if they are trying to run a more scalable business with setting up training plans and some other self-service stuff that they can sell through the platform. And there is one of the biggest mindset things I see is that they're either scared of or they have a negative perspective on what marketing is. So they don't necessarily see marketing as a good thing. And I think it's because they don't quite understand what marketing actually is to begin with, I think. So I've actually got a business and marketing degree that I thought for a long time was a bit of a waste of time when I came out of my degree and then went straight into being a software developer. But then sometimes I realized that a lot of the things that I learned that I know about marketing, my approach to it, were things that I learned at the time. So one big example is that coaches think that marketing is advertising, but advertising is marketing, but marketing isn't just advertising. So just quickly, like I remember one concept that I learned at university, which is like the 4 Ps of marketing. So product, pricing, packaging, and promotion. So advertising only fits into one of those things. So if you're thinking about product, that's basically your coaching. So, how you operate as a coach is actually part of your marketing. How you package that up and how you price it. So how all of that appears on your website, how you talk to people about your coaching, having a conversation at a race, like that's all marketing. So if you encompass that and then just think of advertising as just one way to get all of that stuff and put it in front of people, because that's the other people that people don't quite understand how difficult the distribution is, how to actually get all your awesome stuff so people can actually see it and know about you. So I think when people can get their head around that, they're like, oh, actually, I do marketing and I am quite good at it, but they just don't put that structure around it. And the other thing is similar to marketing, that even if they do understand that, they don't quite understand that marketing is like a daily thing that has to be integrated into your business. So and it's a really like pretty much a one-to-one comparison that like I think once coaches understand it, it becomes obvious that endurance training is just like marketing. Like if you don't have the frequency and consistency of endurance training, then if you just do random acts of endurance, then you're not gonna you're not gonna improve. And it's just like marketing. If you just do random marketing campaigns every few months or once a year or something. So marketing really isn't like shouldn't really be campaign based. It's from the mindset perspective. It's like integrated into your everyday part of your business. So I guess those are pretty high level, but those are the things that I see most often.
Yeah, the marketing piece is, you and I have talked about this before, and I agree. I think it's an interesting it's an interesting kind of like conundrum, for lack of a better word, is that I talk to coaches every day, and they're like, oh, I know I need to market, I know I need to be better, and yet we don't see consistent efforts. It's the one place, and I've surveyed coaches before, hundreds and hundreds of coaches, and it is the one place that everyone consistently feels like they're falling short, but also recognizes that they should be doing a better job because they see the potential connection between that and client acquisition. So every coach wants more clients, i.e. more revenue. One of the ways to get that is marketing, but we fall short. And I think it boils down, or it comes back to a couple of things. And I'll make a bit of a broad stroke here because there is some nuance. But one of the things I see consistently is coaches don't understand who their ideal customer is. Right. So they don't know who to talk to. So it's hard to market to everyone. So if I can give any advice, one is to be very clear on who your ideal customer is. And one of the practices, we have a lengthy kind of process, or a really robust process for this in our accelerator, which is we build out customer archetypes and we build stories and psychographs around your clients. And you understand exactly who they are, what they need, and how you're the unique solution to their pain point. When you're doing that, it gives you marketing language, right? You understand what Sally and John and Bob are going through and their pain points and how you solve that. And so if you build your marketing not from a sales perspective, but from a true value add perspective, it starts to feel a lot different, right? Where if I build a marketing campaign, or I put a post out on social media, and I build that post from a place of, man, I really hope this connects with my ideal customer because I'm genuinely interested in helping them be better, helping them solve their pain point. That's going to go a lot longer, a lot further in me maintaining consistency than let me put this out there and hope that I can sell something to someone, hopefully. And then what's going to happen too is it's not going to convert immediately, right? It takes a lot of touch points. You have to have a density of marketing content. And so you also get less frustrated, right? Because you recognize that, okay, if one person saw this, and even if they didn't sign up for my services right now, I've provided value. Over time, that value builds up, and that person will sign up, right? They will convert. So I think that there's a mindset, like back to kind of the mindset piece. I think it's around how we think about marketing and like who we're marketing to, and we don't take the time. We're like, I'm an endurance coach. I work with anybody who wants to do endurance stuff. And you need to get more specific than that, right? It's like the adage is like when you're talking about marketing, it's boiling the ocean, right? You can't boil the ocean. You want to talk to a very specific group of people that you're uniquely positioned to service. And you might be doing a very similar service to the coach next to you, but I promise you have a different client, right? You have a different client based on your lived experiences and how you communicate with people, and the list goes on. So I think I agree. And I think we also get bogged down too in the frequency. Like don't start by thinking that you have to do, don't compare yourself to the person who's doing 30 social media posts a week and it's just like blasting out content, right? That's probably impossible for most solo business owners. So start with something that's obtainable. Can you do 3 social media posts? And if you don't like social media, find your platform. That's the other thing, right? Lean into where you can stay consistent. If you don't want to have a voice on social media, okay, I think it's a good idea, but if you truly are resistant to that and that doesn't feel authentic to you, are you a writer? Do you want to do video stuff? Do you want to find your place and just stay consistent there? I think that's the biggest thing. I don't know. What's been your experience with how to manage all of the places to market? Because I think that bogs people down too, is there's a million places to put your stuff. And I think that keeps people from being consistent because they feel like they can't do it all, so they don't do it at all. But what's been your experience on that part?
Yeah, I think to begin with, to warm yourself up and get confident, like probably just like you were saying, pick the one that resonates with you the most. If you're good in front of video, then, maybe YouTube. Or I think it probably doesn't matter too much as you build up your confidence around it. There's lots of good content online describing how it's like the confidence thing. And it's the same with writing. It's the same with video. It's the same with everything. People don't want to put something online that's not good. But the only way to get good is to publish stuff. Mm-hmm. So, even if and a good example of this is you see someone who's really good at YouTube videos or Instagram posts or something like that. If you intentionally go back and scroll back to the very beginning of their content, you'll see something that's nowhere near as good. And I think publishing is the key because sure, you could practice stuff and not publish it, but there's no accountability with that. There's no feedback, there's no real anything, and then no motivation to carry on doing that. So I think starting small, starting narrow. I think probably Instagram's a good place to start. I think there's a lot of athletes on there, and you can create really short content on those things, on those social platforms as well. So you're not on the hook for a long piece of content, and you can work through that later. So start where you're comfortable, I think, but then it's actually also really simple. Like you can focus on one of those platforms, but it actually doesn't take that much extra time to then publish the same piece of content to other platforms as well, without getting too hung up on, people say that for a YouTube video, it should be this long and then the content should be about this, but then on Instagram, it should be this long and then the content should be about this, and you should use hashtags and stuff. And all that stuff gets really complicated, and then you'll spend a whole day just crafting each thing for each channel. So if you just tailor it for the channel that you're focusing on, and then publish it on the other ones and see how those other ones go. And then you can optimize and improve later on. Maybe when you've got more revenue coming in, and you could hire a VA to do some editing or a video editor or that sort of thing. But and you're right, if you're thinking about all of those things that you need to do on all of the different platforms, it just becomes overwhelming. You're like, oh, there's no point because I can't do that. I don't have the time. So you're right, just to narrow, focus down, pick one of them, create some content on it, and then maybe start sharing it across other platforms later.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I always say, perfection is the enemy of progress, right? I think it keeps us from doing a lot of things where we imagine. And the thing to remember with marketing in particular, and even more specifically with social media, but this is really across all platforms at this point, because people's attention is so short, is that no one is paying as close attention as you think they are, right? So even if it was the worst post in the world and you have typos and you fumble and it's gone, right? It lasts for a second, and then tomorrow no one will remember. The statistic is, it takes 10 touch points with your content for someone to take some sort of action. So let's go to your website. Now we're not even talking about a purchasing decision. We're talking about some sort of action. So they have to see your post on Instagram and a video and a this and that. So 10 times. So by the time they get to the 10th one, you're going to be a lot better at it anyway, right? So they're not going to remember the first one that you messed up. And so I try to keep that in mind. Just put it out there and see how it goes. I mean, some of the ones, and from a marketing perspective, some of the content that I was the least confident in or was the most self-critical about got the best traction, for any number of reasons. Because I was harder on myself than others were, or just sometimes those mistakes resonated. I made a crappy video in my gym after a workout, and I was like, and it was great, right? Because it was vulnerable, and I was just talking about something I believed in, and that got a lot of traction, things like that, right? So it doesn't have to be this perfect thing. I think the other thing that I want to mention or touch on, because it's something that I think is really important, it's kind of in the same vein as the sales piece, right? Because we're talking about marketing, right? We want to drive customers. And then the next place where I see a lot of coaches really struggle and kind of fumble in terms of turning that into something meaningful is sales, right? So we want that marketing to drive some sort of action from the customer. A lot of times, most times for coaches, at least early on when we're selling some sort of more personalized service, that's going to result in some sort of sales call, right? Typically a very popular call to action for coaches is schedule a consultation, right? And I think that's great. Because I also believe that if you can get someone on the phone, a video or even voice call, because what you're really doing is you're selling a relationship, right? You want the opportunity to connect so that person sees that, again, you're the unique solution to their problem, and they want to feel that. People make decisions from a place of emotion. Before you get the opportunity to show them that you're a great coach and you write great training plans and you have all this knowledge, you first have to connect with them from a relationship perspective, right? We don't get to give them a training plan out of the gate. What we give them is ourselves. And so you have to be good at sales. And that is something that I think you need to practice. You need to understand what that looks and feels like for you. You need to practice the language. You need to practice the questions that you ask. You need to practice how you connect with that other person, because one of the things that I learned early on as a coach is that it is a very, very hard thing to do, to connect with someone in a meaningful way, listen to them very intently, and then explain to them how you can solve their problems in a 30-minute phone call, right? You have a very short period of time to make a really meaningful connection, because as we all know, the coach-athlete relationship is an intimate one, right? As you get to know one another, you're talking about stuff that's really meaningful to this individual, to the client we're working with. So I think that's the next piece that I always want to encourage coaches to work on. It's kind of the last piece that we think about a lot of times. And I talk to coaches and they're like, oh yeah, like, no, I don't think I'm really good at sales, or I don't like the word sales, but then lo and behold, like, they're not converting clients, right? Their marketing efforts, the people they meet, the flyers they passed out, the whatever, it's not working. And it's hard to get clients. So you really want to make sure that you can capitalize on that when you have them in front of you. So, what I'm curious, like, Are you seeing any of that on your end, just in people's, like, what's the language, how do people feel about sales or those sales calls, or what's that been from your
Yeah,
experience?
I think they struggle with it because selling yourself is a difficult thing to do. But and just going back to the content piece as well, like someone gave me a good tip one day is when you're putting content out there, just talk like you're talking to one athlete, to one of your athletes, and giving them advice on the specific thing that you are struggling with. And I think the same approach should be taken to like a sales call as well, in terms of the way what you're talking about, what they're struggling with, how you think you can help them, examples of how you've helped someone else. Because you don't. The great thing about doing a sales call when you're trying to sell coaching is all you have to be is just be yourself, like you are with an athlete on an actual like recap of the month, or whatever the calls that coaches tend to do, like a weekly call or a monthly call or whatever, and they go over things. So you can have that same approach to it. You need to establish some authority, of course, and you need to be the one that takes control of the situation. Because the other thing is that coaches do many calls with many athletes, but athletes do very few calls with very few coaches. So they if you were doing like a sales call with an athlete, maybe it's their first coach and they don't know anything about what being coached is even like. So you have to like, I think, begin that authority in a way that's not overbearing, but basically the same way you coach. So then the athlete gets to experience how you are as a coach, because there's no point coming onto a sales call and then like trying to do some sort of script or something that some sales guru told you works or something for a sales call, because you're the one that ends up delivering the service. Whereas other types of sales calls, like if you think about a big software company, a salesman does the sales call and then he hands you off to an implementation team or something like that. So it actually there's no like connection between the sales call and then the actual product delivered. But with a coach, it's like it ends up being a more of a seamless flow from the sales call into the actual coaching and consulting. So it's important to be yourself, and I think that is actually quite helpful as well. It's like, well, you have to be as yourself, but throw some structure into it. So there's a lot of good sales techniques around there, but the most important thing about them is the structure of them, like how you begin the call, how you make sure that you can set it up so you can get them talking, so you can listen, and then you can adjust partway through the call based on that specific athlete. So if you have some sort of script, then you got to throw that out the window as well, because it's not going to work if you just got some script that you run through. And then just simple things like my business coach taught me, and this is not like some amazing knowledge or something, like it's just a simple sales thing that there's a BAM fam, he calls it. So book a meeting from a meeting. So basically you get to the end of the sales call, and then I think a lot of coaches will say, okay, thanks for the call. Let me know if you want to do coaching. And then you finish the call, and then you've just put it in their court to come back to you whenever you want to come back to you. So again, if coaches think about it as in how they take the leadership role, so they have to take the leadership role because that's the role that they're going to be taking during the coaching. And at the end of the call, they set something up. So if you're prescribing training, you wouldn't say, okay, so I've got some training for you. Here it is. You just do it whenever you want to do it, and let me know when you've done it, or if you liked it. You got to say, okay, so I'll follow up on Friday next week to see how things are going, or even better, to say, let's book a call, let's book a follow-up call for Friday next week to discuss the next steps. And then without being too high pressure, you are setting an expectation and a date. So then the good thing about that is you're either going to get them by Friday or you're not going to get them by Friday. And both of those things are good, because if you get them, then you can start coaching and start getting paid. If you're not going to get them, then you can stop following up with them and then just move on to the next one. Because ultimately, you're not going to convert every sales call that you have. And then that's not a bad thing, because obviously it's not a good match. So, if you get your sales calls down, if you really nail your sales calls out, they're going to do two things. They're going to get the best athletes for you, and they're going to filter out the worst athletes for you. So, I don't know what the ratio might end up being, but there's nothing wrong with a lot of them not converting, because that just means you're just filtering out the ones that wouldn't have been a good fit anyway.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I work with coaches on and am an advocate for is how you close, right? And it's like you said, you have to ask for the sell, right? So my biggest like pet peeve, and this is not from a place of like a frustration with the coach, it's because it squanders the opportunity, is when a coach is like, all right, thanks, I'll talk to you later, like let me know what you want to do. And you're like, no, that's from that perspective, in that like realm of coaching, that in my opinion is the worst thing you can do, because it just does not convert, right? You want to, like, I'll give people a few pointers, and there's lots of ways to craft this. And I agree, like you said, like it's not a sales script. It needs to be you. You are selling yourself. But the main goal would be to listen to that individual, understand what they need. While you're listening, align your service offerings with the needs of that client. And at the end of that call, or somewhere in that call, you say, hey, Susan, I hear you. This is great. I think based on where you're coming from and what your goals are, I think my X package would be best for you. And, is that in alignment with your expectations? I'd love to set up a call on Friday to talk over this package and outline next steps. Really let them know what you intend to do, and then let them know that you heard them and that you understand how you can solve it, right? Because they don't know how you can solve it. If you say, yeah, thanks for the call, that was great to connect, let me know if you want to start working together. The client, like you said, they don't talk to coaches every day, right? We can see how we can help clients because we do it all day, every day. The client's like, well, help me. How are you what should I think about? Right? Like, if you put yourself in their shoes, there's so many loose ends. There's so many questions that they don't have the answer to. So give them something to chew on. Let them know that you heard them. And again, it's from a place of support. Our job is to support our clients. If that's truly what we want to do, then tell them how you want to support them. Let them know that you heard them and that you have a service that's in alignment with that. Now, if you don't, also be honest, right? I think that's the other thing. Use that time to say, hey, I don't think this is the right fit. Like, I can refer you to another coach. I don't only work with the right people, right? So on the coach side, it's also an interview for you. You only want to work with your ideal client. I know that's hard to do, and that's kind of a separate conversation. But when you're just starting out, you think that all money is good money. The fact of the matter is it's not. And if you can be really clear on who your client is and work to attract those people and then work to convert them on a sales call, we could also call it an exploratory call, or, if sales is a 4-letter word for some people, that's fine. You can call it whatever you want to call it. Discovery call. But yeah, I think, again, I couldn't agree more. And I think to just help people, don't leave it open-ended. Book a call. Here's how I can help you. Here's the next steps. Outline what your follow-up is going to look like. Hey, I'm going to reach back out to you 2 days from now to see if you have any questions. I know this is a big step, right? Like, give them, let them know that you're interested and that you heard them, and let them know what they can expect from you, right? Because if you just throw them back out there and they're like, I wonder when I'll hear from Taylor again, right? Like, it's just not a comfortable feeling from a client perspective, right? And maybe we might have all been in a situation like that when we've been on the client side and we've been tentatively interested in some service or product, but we're like, I don't really have the information to know what it is, right? Like, is this the right move? I don't really feel any more comfortable or confident than I did when I got here. So I think that's the biggest piece. Like it, and you have to craft that language, and you have to practice, and you have to ask the right questions. And it's very much a communication strategy skill set, right? We have to communicate effectively. We have to connect. We have to be authentic and vulnerable, but there's a balance there, and you kind of have to do that in real time based on the individual. So yeah, that's something that we put a lot of time and energy into on the accelerator side, because it's something that, unless you come from that background, you don't have that skill, right? Unless you've been in sales, you don't learn that anywhere else other than doing sales. And you certainly don't learn that by and I'm not knocking this part of coaching, but you don't learn that by being a really passionate coach and writing awesome training plans and being excited about helping athletes. Like, there's nothing about that makes you good at growing your business and selling it and bringing in clients. So it's something that has to work. I don't know. What's the other, I know we've talked about lots of other challenges and frustrations. What's another one from your perspective? What's still untouched in our conversation?
Yeah, I think I mentioned this briefly, but structure is a really important thing around sales and marketing. And it's part of the sales call, part of your processes, and starting to write all of those things down sort of helps as well. So, having a few standard operating procedures to say, in this situation, or this is what we do, or, during your regular week, on Mondays I do this, and then on Tuesdays I do this, back to the planning out your marketing. Because basically, if you don't put it on the plan, put it on the calendar, then it's not going to get done, because it's one of those things that, if you're passionate about coaching, you're probably not going to be that passionate about sales and marketing. So if you don't have it on your calendar, then you're probably going to go and do something else that you prefer to do. But I think the strength of what coaches will have is the ability to follow a plan, but it's just getting the plan down in the first place, and also knowing what to put in the plan. It's just like when you're coaching an athlete, they don't know what to put in their plan. That's why they've hired you. And also, as a coach, you probably don't know what to put in your marketing and sales plan. And I feel like that's where something like your accelerator can really help. So, like you, I started my business up all on my own, did everything on my own, tried to learn everything on my own, and it just takes so much longer to try and do it. And I love figuring things out for myself and doing them, but sometimes you need a bit of help to get you going, and then same for me that, I've been selling software to coaches for 10 years now. So, at some point the reality kicked in that, man, you got to turn this into a proper long-term sustainable business that doesn't rely on you to be working all of the time to generate any revenue. So the advice I'd give to people is to get some help so you can establish that structure, and even just to get you kicked off. So I've spent the last, I'm not doing it right now, but I spent 2 years going through a coaching, a business coaching, how would you call it? It's sort of like an accelerator, not quite, because you can just continue, but I did it for 2 years with other people who are doing all of the same thing as me. So you could easily go online and find out all of the stuff and learn about all of the stuff about a business, but it can be pretty magic to go through something with other people so I was in a group of 5 other software as a service businesses, all quite small, and just learning from each other as you go, and the coach putting in structure that is specific to your type of business. You could do some other business coaching thing through some business coach who business coaches any sort of business, but they won't understand the specifics of endurance sports. They just don't have the context. So some of the things are not going to they might give you advice that is, good for some businesses, but not for others. So having a resource like an accelerator that's built for, endurance and fitness businesses is going to get you there so much faster. You're not going to have to go, oh, does that apply to me or not? I'm not too sure. Yeah. So that's right. So I see real value in doing something like that, and I'll put all of your information about the accelerator in the show notes so everyone knows where to go to check it out. Did you want to cover off any more of those 5 points? We might have covered them in our various conversations about stuff.
Yeah, no, I think we touched on them all in some way. I mean, there's obviously a lot of moving parts there, and every coaching business is different. The goals of that coach or that business owner is different. But yeah, I mean, just to double down on what you're saying, the support piece is huge. I recognize now, having done it myself, but really not electively. It's just that there was, this was a little while ago, and more than a decade ago. And it just wasn't really available, I couldn't find it. And so it's not, if you can figure it out on your own, it's just that to flatten the learning curve, again, just like dramatically reduces the time to success. So it truthfully, I mean, I think one of the most enjoyable parts of what I do now is collaborate with other coaches. Like, I learn as much from our, from our coaching group in the accelerator program than they learn from me, as a mentor. And then all the coaches are trading ideas. And so it's just so much more fun to have that energy, right? When you have inspired people that are building things that they're passionate about, and they're hungry and they care about their businesses, and that's an energy that is really, really, contagious, and it keeps you motivated, it keeps you excited, it keeps you hungry. Like you said, because you said this when we first started, is I feel like when you don't have that and you're like, oh, I'm just going to do it yeah, it's okay, I don't need it, you just lose that steam. You can't sustain that forever, right? Because even if you're doing it part-time, it still requires a lot of work. It's still, running a business is hard. I don't care if you have 5 athletes or 500. You kind of have to have, at least at a baseline, some similar structures in place. And the maintenance component of that is not really, I would argue that it's harder to get your first 10 athletes than it is to get your next 100, because that's where you're building your systems, your infrastructure, your processes, you're learning what your customer needs, the list goes on. Once you have those things figured out, and that's actually one of the baselines that we set, or the milestones that we set for the accelerator, is to get 8 ideal clients. And that's kind of what we've seen. Like, when you start to work with these, then we can actually start to talk about scalable solutions and technology implementation and some of these other processes. But until you get this kind of critical mass and a density of clients, you're still learning. And so again, it's so much more enjoyable when you start to scale with people, and you you don't feel like you're losing steam, because it still takes effort to do it a little bit, right? Even if you're not interested in going all in, it's still easy to get burnt out. And so yeah, I'm committed to helping coaches be able to go all in and really enjoy the process, because I think that's the other thing, is that we often lose that. I see a lot of coaches lose that passion that got them into it, because running a business is a much different thing than being a coach or riding your bike or going for a run, right? Which are kind of the things that got us excited to begin with. So I just want to keep that passion alive too. And it's totally doable. But I think support is a big piece of it, because without that, it gets kind of grueling sometimes, and it gets pretty lonely and it takes a long time. So yeah, I encourage folks to reach out to myself if they have any questions. I'm here to be a resource first and foremost, and to be a value add for coaches in the endurance sports space. So if I can do that, let me know. And yeah, thanks, Cam. This is a great chat. There'll be more to come. We just scratched the surface. So I appreciate having me on.
My mind's going about other topics to talk about. I think we could probably go for hours. Just wanted to touch on that last group thing as well. You get support, but you also get accountability from it as
Mm-hmm.
well, and then it makes you want to do the things that are not enjoyable necessarily. And because
Right.
you're going to come back to the next group call, and then if everyone's like, oh yep, so last week you said you were going to do this and that, and it's like, what are you going to do? Come back and say, oh no, I didn't get around to it because
Yeah,
I had to go for a
totally.
bike ride or something, like it's like, and you love it, like you love that accountability. It's the same if you
Yeah.
go like, if you've been running on your own for ages and ages and you're like, oh man, I'm losing a bit of enthusiasm here, and then you go for a group run and everyone's pace picks up a little bit, everyone's a little bit more enthusiastic, just the power of working with other people with the same
Yeah.
challenges.
And it's
Yeah.
the same reason like people hire us as coaches. It feels good to have someone in your corner.
Yeah.
Can you do it on your own? Absolutely. You can train for your triathlon or your marathon or whatever on your own. But it certainly feels better when you have somebody that's going to give you some guidance and going to be in your corner and be rooting for you and help you shortcut a lot of the missteps that you'll inevitably have in your training because you're not quite sure which direction to go and have, right? So it's the same exact thing, right? It's all the reasons that we're valuable to our clients. It's the same thing on the business side. Is like having those people and those processes in place, right? You don't have to recreate the wheel, right? Your coach knows exactly how to write your training plan and how to customize it to you and your physiology and your unique goals. And it's the same thing on the business accelerator side, right? Like, customizing that process and helping you refine it so that you can get there faster and enjoy it and not get hurt and burn out, right? Like even the symptoms are the same on the endurance side and the coaching side, right? Like, you're not going to pull a hamstring, but you could certainly get emotionally injured, right? You
Yeah.
keep banging your head against the wall and you get, you think, oh, what's it all worth? It's not going to work. I can't make any money at this, right? Like, no, I mean, that's all things that are solvable, but I think it does take a community and it takes, I think having that accountability for sure. You see other people that are hungry and moving the needle, like you're not going to sit by and not do it if the people in your circle are all doing great stuff and like crushing it and, getting clients and building new products and doing all the things. And you're not going to be like, especially if we're coming from this space in particular, we're all athletes, right? There's a competitive aspect of that. So if nothing else, you're going to be like, it kind of gives you that little push. You're like, oh no, I'm gonna train a little harder, right? I'm gonna make sure I think about that marketing plan or think about my ideal customer, or finish this piece of biz dev or whatever that is. So the list goes on. As you said, I'm sure we could go on and on.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
something I'm super passionate about. But thanks, Cam. I'm grateful for the time. It's a great chat and looking forward to having more of them.
Yeah. This has been awesome. And I think maybe we could sit down another day and talk about something more specific, So if anyone's got any real challenges they're having, feel free to send them in, and then maybe we could have a look through them and cover something specific. But yeah, maybe just, I'll put it all in the show notes, but maybe just mention your website or social channels or whatever that you're on regularly for people to jump on and find you.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's thomasendurancecoaching.com. That's how you can access both sides of the business. So that's our home base for the athlete facing side of things. Also, if you click in the top right corner, there is a button that says grow your business. That is the link to, or gives you access to the application for the Growth Circle, which again is our business accelerator program, which is what we've been talking about here. So thomasendurancecoaching.com, top right corner of the header, that'll get you to the application for the accelerator program. And then you can find us on Instagram at Thomas Endurance Coaching, all social platforms, YouTube, and so on. And then I'm also active as well, and it's at Taylor J. Thomas. So you can find me all over the place. I'm very active on LinkedIn. And I have a business of coaching newsletter where I talk about a lot of stuff like this that comes out every Friday. So I'm all over the place, lots of places to find me. I'm here to be a resource again. And we'll drop links to all that stuff below so folks can get a hold of me if I can be a value add.
Oh, cool. So, yep, thanks again. And yeah, go definitely look Taylor up. And I think just having someone like you to follow will be beneficial regardless. And hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Great. Looking forward to it.